Okay, let's dive into something really quite extraordinary today. A journey that feels less like exploring space and more like, stumbling into humanity's wildest dreams, all seen through the very normal eyes of an ordinary man.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're using H.G. Wells' fascinating novel Men Like Gods as our sort of roadmap.
And the ordinary man guiding us, that's Mr. Barnstaple. Wells paints him as a journalist who's just, well, tired, fed up.
Yeah, tired of the grumbling and peeving of his life, the awful dyspeptic stuff in his newspaper, the constant focus on cruel and unhappy things.
He looks at the world, what Wells calls Earth's age of confusion, and basically sees it heading for disaster, driven by baser but more energetic men.
Right. So what he really wants, what he dreams of, is just a holiday. Maybe even, a holiday in Utopia.
So our mission today is to unpack this accidental escape. We'll follow Barnstaple's sudden plunge from Earth into this world that seems to be Utopia.
And explore the incredible clash that happens when his fellow Earthlings follow him in. And we'll try to figure out what we can pull from this journey, from that stark contrast he sees that might be relevant to our own world, our own confusion.
Barnstaple's escape, it starts on impulse, doesn't it? His family's away.
Uh-huh. And he's cooked up this doctor's note excuse with his colleague, Mr. Peeve, which already sounds a bit, well, shaky.
Definitely. So he packs quickly, jumps in his car, the yellow peril, he calls it.
And he's driving towards London. Everything seems totally normal, gay and plentiful traffic, familiar roads.
And then bam, he turns a corner, and the road.
Yeah.
It's just not the same road anymore.
It's suddenly this wonderful road. Wells describes it as being made of glass, sometimes clear, sometimes milky or opalescent, with gold glittering inside it.
Wow. And it's huge, right? 12, 15 yards wide, with perfect green borders and these crazy vibrant flowers he's never seen before.
And the whole landscape shifts with it. You get these creamy colored cattle like from southern Europe or India, trees shaped like flames, a beautiful white and gold colonnade.
Snow-capped mountains in the distance.
Yeah, and the air itself is described as astonishingly clear and sweet. Just completely different.
But what's really weird is that the other cars, the ones right behind him.
Gone. Just vanished. Though the limousine does reappear a bit later, pulled over.
Okay, so this is where first contact happens. He sees the people of this new world, the beautiful people.
Right. They're lightly dressed, beautifully built, Wells says, incredibly graceful.
But the very first thing they find together, it's not beautiful at all.
No. Near this ruined building looks like some kind of lab explosion. They find 2 dead Utopians.
Still stunningly beautiful, apparently, even in death, but killed with enormous violence. It's a pretty chilling way to enter paradise.
It really is. It tells you straight away, this isn't just some static, perfect place. There are forces at work, maybe even dangers.
And it's right after this grim discovery that the other Earthlings show up, the ones from the limousine.
Yeah, the whole crew arrives. You've got Mr. Burley, the statesman type, polished, but maybe a bit aloof.
And then Mr. Rupert Catskill, the sharp literary critic.
And his secretary, Mr. Freddie Mush, the eyeglass gentleman. Plus Lady Stella, Father Amerton, the very religious clerical gentleman.
Lord Barralonga, Mr. Hunker, the American cinema king. Oh, and M. Dupont, the French journalist, kind of flustered.
Right. He's interested in the cinema angle. And don't forget the chauffeurs, Penk and Ridley. A real mixed bag.
And their first reaction is just chaos.
Total confusion. Just where are we? What is this place? Over and over.
So how do the Utopians talk to them? Because this part's pretty wild.
It really is. They seem to be speaking perfect English really clearly. But later, a Utopian named Earthred explains it's not really language as we know it.
Not spoken language.
No, it's more like direct transmission of ideas. The thought itself, before it was clothed in words, the Earthlings' minds just automatically translate it.
Wow. So they're communicating on a whole different level already.
Fundamentally different. And a Utopian woman steps forward, addresses them directly. She's curious about how their arrival might link to that explosion.
And she invites them somewhere for a conference.
Yeah, a sensible suggestion. But then the conversation takes this slightly funny turn towards food.
Ah, yes. The Utopian asks if they eat often, like several times a day, and what sort of things.
And Mr. Burley, in classic fashion, gives this incredibly detailed list of a typical English day of eating. Tea in bed, breakfast, lunch with wine, tea, dinner.
Maybe even supper.
Right. And then Mr. Mush just blurts out, They're not vegetarians.
Which, as you pointed out earlier, isn't even quite right because Burley mentioned bacon and eggs.
Exactly. It's a perfect little moment showing the Earthlings instantly trying to slap labels on them based on their own limited world.
Meanwhile, the Utopian woman is just observing, concluding they must be from some strange other world, and their men of knowledge need to connect and exchange ideas.
It's a scientific curiosity, not judgment. Very different reaction.
So then the Utopians take them on a tour, flying them around in these silent airplanes. What do they see?
It's a picture of, well, ordered beauty, garden pastures, grazing animals, unbelievably bright plants, simple tracks for walking or cycling,
Roads bordered with flowers and fruit trees.
golden fields of corn, vineyards, people working, but also massive cyclopean turbines, and industrial buildings, but they seem integrated, not scarring the landscape. Skillfully built roads, impressive viaducts.
Sounds advanced, but also harmonious.
Very much so. But Father Amerton notices something, or rather the lack of something.
Right, he doesn't see any babies or really young children.
Yeah, exactly. It's a small detail, but it hints right away at a different approach to family, maybe population, that immediately clashes with Earthling assumptions.
And as they spend more time there, they start to get bits and pieces about Utopian society, though it sounds like the Earthlings really struggle to grasp it.
Oh, they absolutely do. Their own baggage keeps getting in the way. One of the most fundamental concepts the Utopians explain is their idea of government.
What is?
They just state it plainly. Our education is our government.
Okay, our education is our government. What does that actually mean in practice? How does that work instead of, kings, councils, politicians?
Wells seems to suggest it's a stage beyond all that. They view earthly systems as, well, inefficient, often run by people who don't have the specific knowledge needed.
So generalists running things they don't understand.
Kind of. In Utopia, the business of politics and law isn't centralized. It's diffused among the people with knowledge. It's about applying expertise where it's needed, not about power or arbitrary decisions.
That's a radical idea. So decisions come from the experts in that field, and everyone's educated enough to participate somehow.
That seems to be the implication. It's described as highly socialistic, but it flips our norms. On Earth, most things are private property except, like, the air and the sea.
Yeah, the commons.
Yeah. In Utopia, it's the reverse. Almost everything useful is shared, except the wild, untamed places. And crucially, there's no working class.
No working class.
It apparently died out 1,500 years or so ago. Things like wages slavery are ancient history. The guiding idea is who loves the rose must serve the rose himself. Work is self-motivated, serving the collective because you want to, because it fulfills you.
That's a world away from Barnstaple feeling crushed by his newspaper job back home. What about families and relationships? That's always a big one.
A huge one. And yeah, utopian ways are very different. No forced, indissoluble pairs marriage as a legal or religious contract is gone.
So people just pair up.
By an inner necessity, Wells writes, based on genuine connection, not outside rules. And the family itself isn't gone, it's just expanded, enlarged, and glorified until it embraced the whole world.
Embraced the whole world.
They connect it to their prophet's teaching. His real family, his mother and brethren, were those who actually listened to and followed his words, his ideas.
I can only imagine how Father Amerton took that.
Oh, you can guess. Wells describes him as sulky or just deeply disapproving whenever these core beliefs are challenged.
And they've made huge leaps in health and managing the environment, too.
Incredible leaks, infectious diseases, fevers, colds, flu, all gone, wiped out over centuries through really careful public health work, isolation, tracking carriers, that sort of thing.
That sounds like a massive undertaking.
It was. Same with parasites, pests like mosquitoes and flies, even larger animals like hyenas and wolves, gone. Through huge multi-generational projects, including rebuilding houses to be cleaner.
Wow. But didn't that cause other problems, like getting rid of insects needed for pollination?
Yeah, Wells notes it wasn't simple. They had to be incredibly careful not to wipe out essential creatures. He mentions flycatchers and swallows are rare now because the insect balance shifted so much. It shows just how complex and long-term their planning was.
And what about their way of thinking? Their mindset?
It's described as fundamentally different, clear and frank and direct, unburdened by the frictions, concealments, ambiguities, and ignorances that Wells thinks cripple Earthling minds as they grow up.
So no suspicion, no defensiveness.
Apparently not. They don't have that automatic suspicion of teachers or authority figures. They're described as beautifully unwary, which must seem incredibly strange, almost naive to the Earthlings.
And a big part of that is how they view nature.
A huge part. They dare to face what Mother Nature is. They don't romanticize her. They see nature as purposeless and blind, sometimes horrible, making humans by accident, full of endless evil as well as good.
So they don't worship nature.
No, they manage it. They control their environment and even try to adapt human nature itself. They see earthly science as still tangled up in fear and taboos, preferring easy answers.
Like, leave things to God?
Back to competition, rather than doing the hard work of actually understanding and controlling the universe.
That's a really pointed critique from Wells, that we prefer thinking someone or something else is in charge, God or the market, instead of taking full responsibility ourselves.
Exactly. And it ties into their view of religion, too. Their prophet figure, unlike Christ, wasn't crucified. He was tortured and exposed on a wheel.
On a wheel. Why?
Because his core teaching of universal service was a direct threat to the rich and dominant powers of his time. So they follow his teaching because it's wonderful and true, but they absolutely do not worship him as a deity.
They separate the message from the messenger.
Precisely. They look at earthly religion and see how the prophet got turned into a magical god, how the teachings got twisted, how the symbol, the wheel, got used for war and oppression. They think their prophet would be horrified if he came back to Earth now.
So follow the ideas, not the dogma. How do they handle news and information?
It's very structured. A clear separation between news and discussion. News reports, discoveries, events are factual, available in reading rooms, not delivered daily, and crucially, no advertisements tied to them.
No clickbait headlines, then.
Probably not. The news about the Earthlings was apparently quite full and amusing to them at first. People's lives are reported on when they die. The real liveliness is in the discussion part.
Discussion and criticism?
Yes. Free discussion and criticism is their fifth principle of liberty. Wells doesn't list the first four here, but singling out the fifth suggests it's a really core, maybe even a hard one, freedom for them.
And it's interesting what they don't have. No big crowd events.
Right. No football mania, no horse racing, no bullfights, public executions, royal weddings, war rallies, state funerals, none of that stuff that whips up mass emotion on Earth.
No turf, no sport in that mass spectacle sense.
It probably connects to that clear and frank mindset, maybe less susceptible to that kind of crowd psychology. And finally, there's science. It's just light years ahead.
3,000 years of progress.
With 100 million good brains working on it. They apparently think in terms of many-dimensional space, stuff that's really hard for Earthlings to even conceive of.
Makes our science sound pretty basic.
It does. But even Sungold, one of their scientists, admits how little they really know. For every observation made, he says, 100 are missed. Knowledge opens doors, but it also shows you how many more doors there are.
That constant sense of discovery. It defines Utopia, along with the order and beauty. But even with all that, the Earthlings just can't shake their own ways of thinking. Barnstaple himself sometimes snaps back to reality, right?
Yeah, he gets lost in the ideas about government and history, then suddenly the absolute reality of his adventure hits him again.
And the others. Their perspectives just clash completely. Father Amerton trying to jam everything into his religious boxes.
Constantly asking these pulpit fashion questions about Holy Union and getting sulky when the Utopian answers don't fit his worldview.
And Mr. Catskill's take is pretty harsh.
Oh yeah, he just dismisses the Utopians as degenerate men, too gentle, ineffectual. He thinks they've lost the ability to handle emergencies because life is too easy. Peace equals weakness, in his view.
Which leads to that really disturbing Council of War.
Disturbing is the word. Wells describes this little band of lost human beings instantly becoming fierce and keen, not about getting home, but about which of their nations should dominate Utopia.
Seriously, they're arguing about empire right there.
Right there. Hunker for America, DuPont for France, Catskill for Britain, debating the Entente, Western civilization, a white man's world, and explicitly wanting to exclude Russians, Germans, Japanese. It's just raw prejudice boiling over.
Even in paradise. And Mr. Burley.
He tries to be the voice of reason, sort of. He points out Barnstaple isn't on their side, it's 11-1, but he agrees with Catskill that they need unity of action, and, crucially, they need to secure a hostage or two.
Hostages, wow. Barnstaple must have been horrified.
He protests, tries to reason with them. But these Utopians are as human as we are. All that is most sane and civilized in ourselves is with them.
How does that go down?
Ridley, the chauffeur, just shuts him down, calls it jawing. End of discussion.
So they actually go through with it, like a plan.
They do. It feels like this grim parody of military organization. Ridley nominates Catskill as captain with full military powers. Burley seconds it. Roles are assigned.
What about Barnstaple?
Ridley's on cooking duty. Barnstaple gets the chilling title, non-com Parnaby. His job, assist Ridley with meals and be at Lieutenant Hunker's disposal in the chemical laboratory for experimenting and bomb making. Keep laboratory clean.
Bomb making. Good grief. Casual horror of that. And Lady Stella.
Her reaction is telling. She just feels cold, goes off to unpack, shivering. She senses the awfulness of it. Their plan is set. Ambush the next Utopians who arrive. They get ready with revolvers, rope, even a table leg.
And then the Utopians arrive. Serpentine and Cedar.
Serpentine, who represents science and knowledge, and Cedar, who represents healing. Literally, the targets are science and healing.
And Barnstaple. He has to choose.
He does. He sees them walking into the trap, and he just can't let it happen. He yells out a warning. These Earthlings want to imprison you. Don't come here. Danger.
But Catskill fires anyway.
He does. Pat, 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 Wells writes. Serpentine is hit. Barnstaple cries out, "Oh, God," as Serpentine falls.
Terrible. What happens next?
Cedar reacts instantly with incredible speed and efficiency, throws mush into Catskill and Pank, takes down DuPont and Hunker. It's over almost before it begins for them. Lord Baralonga manages to fire a shot at an approaching Utopian flyer. More Utopians are arriving.
And Barnstaple, what's he doing?
He stops shouting, just watches, hands clenched. Then he climbs away from the scene, up onto an old castle rampart. He feels this profound chill in the air and loneliness like a pain.
Complete disillusionment.
Absolutely total. He sees his fellow Earthlings for what they are in that moment. A handful of Hottentots in a showman's van, a dogfight on a sinking ship. Their immediate instinct was to drag Utopia down to Earth's level of aggression, subjugations, cruelties, and disorders.
They tried to take science and healing hostage.
Hostages to disorder, exactly. And they killed science, killed Serpentine. He has this devastating realization. Earth could be Utopia, but it's been trampled to dust and ruined by people like Catskill, Hunker, Baralonga, Ridley, DuPont.
What stands against them?
He sees only the pathetic whinings of the Peeves, the passive, acquiescent disapproval of the Burleys, his own feeling of immeasurable ineffectiveness, and maybe the quiet work of a few writers and teachers who produced results at present untraceable.
That's pretty bleak.
It is, but it leads him to think about a friend back home, one who died from overwork. This friend worked for Utopia all his days, died poor and miserable, but maybe, just maybe, his life contributed to making this utopian world possible somewhere, sometime.
So even anonymous struggle matters.
That's the hope he clings to. He wonders if there are hundreds or thousands like his friend back on Earth working quietly for a better world and what magic keeps them going. He wishes he could send them a message from Utopia.
So even in that dark moment, seeing the worst of Earth, he still holds on to a belief that the true thing grows. The truth, the clear idea, will eventually win out over the grabbers and fighters.
It's a flicker of hope. After that confrontation, Barnstaple is stranded on this place called Quarantine Crag. He tries to escape by climbing down the cliff.
Which sounds incredibly dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Wells describes it as painfully and laboriously finding a route. Rotten rock breaks away under him. There are these terrifying gaps and always the void below.
And then Catskill finds him.
Yeah, Catskill finds him clinging there, and there's this bizarre, almost formal exchange. Catskill gives him 15 minutes before they start throwing rocks down.
15 minutes.
It's absurd, but they seem to understand each other's position. Barnstaple gives the old gladiator salute. Moritores te saluo, he who is about to die salutes you.
And Catskill
Just replies, exactly, acknowledging the grim reality.
So Barnstaple realizes he's trapped. Can't go up, can't go down. Just stuck there, starving.
Yes. He finds a little recess and resigns himself to it. He thinks back over his whole journey. Sydenham, Slough, Utopia, the mountain paradise, the aeroplane flight. Seeing the real happiness and order he glimpsed, now seemingly lost forever.
He regrets not seeing more.
Yeah.
Right. Getting away from Earth's
Yeah,
hopelessness.
Deeply regrets it. And he feels this bitterness that the sheer folly, malice, and weakness of his fellow Earthlings prevented any real understanding or connection.
But then, something happens during the night.
Yes, he sees the Utopians. They're climbing the crag, but with proper rope ladders. They're hauling up a huge coil of something. He sees green flashes, hears a throbbing sound. They're bringing up a colossal rope.
For him.
It seems so. The next morning, he wakes up, and they found him. He's rescued.
He's brought back. What happens then? Does he recover?
He does, but he gets sick first. He catches a mixed epidemic that the Earthlings brought with them, measles and influenza, apparently. He recovers slowly, in a very peaceful utopian setting.
And he meets someone there, Lickness.
Yes, Lickness, a utopian woman who cared for him during his illness. Wells describes her as a lingering romantic type. She seems to carry a deep sorrow over the past deaths of her children and their father, who drowned performing some brave act.
And she finds comfort in helping others.
Exactly. Consolation into consoling pain and distress. But Barnstaple's reaction to her is, well, complicated. Maybe even a bit harsh.
Harsh. How so?
He actually sees her as one of Utopia's failures. He thinks her focus on pity and sorrow is almost a vicious desire in a society that values health and vigor so highly.
He thinks he's a better Utopian than she is.
Temperamentally, yes. He sees tragedy differently, brave, stark death, but the water still glittered and the sun still shone. He feels Lickness clings to the loss, reveals a dark, sacrificial disposition, worshipping thorns and nails instead of embracing the potential kingdom of heaven around her.
That's a really challenging thought Wells puts out there. Could dwelling on sorrow actually be unhelpful or even damaging in a truly healthy society?
It definitely makes you think about our own cultural relationship with grief and suffering. He also meets a utopian youth named Crystal.
Crystal. Sounds...
Hard is his name, Wells says. He likes the Earthling experience of crowd events and is intensely curious about history and these strange visitors from Earth.
But even surrounded by Utopia's perfection, Barnstaple feels out of place.
Profoundly useless. He's a stranger, an outcast. He has nothing to do, no work, no normal relationships. He feels like an intelligent dog without a master. He just doesn't fit in.
But he wants to fit in, right? He wants to contribute.
Desperately. He seeks out Sungold, the scientist, and offers his service, says he's willing to risk death just to be useful, to prove he can be as good as a Utopian.
And what does Sungold say?
Sungold acknowledges his sincerity. He talks a bit more about their science thinking beyond our space-time, the vast knowledge they've built over 3,000 years, but always stressing how little we know.
Still humble about it.
Always. And then he tells Barnstaple what his service actually is. By returning to your own world. That's his task. Though Sungold warns there is a risk of death in the return process itself.
Return to Earth. Why?
Sungold gives this amazing perspective on Earth. He sees our thought as barely awakened, our history as just the stirring of a sleeper, a long rebellion against limitations, our wars and revolutions, just indistinct preludes to a greater revolution still to come.
So he sees potential in Earth, despite the chaos.
He does. He sees a steadfast advance underneath it all. A slow, painful struggle towards things like public self-respect and cleanness, international charity, and sorting out our economic life. He sees progress.
And this changes things for Barnstaple.
Completely. He understands. Utopia isn't an escape hatch for just anyone. It's only a home for those who have learnt the way. His service isn't staying, it's going back.
Bringing something back with him.
Yes. Sungold says the nostalgia of Utopia will distress him, but it will also uphold him. He realizes, on Earth, I shall be a Utopian. He finally feels he belongs, now that his service, his purpose, is accepted.
So, the return journey. He goes back by airplane.
Yes, back to that same spot on the glassy road, with Lickness and Crystal accompanying him. He notices the site of the lab explosion has already been rebuilt, new flowers planted. Life moves on quickly in Utopia.
And his car, the Yellow Peril?
It's waiting for him in a hayfield nearby, looked after, oiled, full of petrol. But now, after seeing Utopian tech, it just looks like the clumsiest piece of ironmongery conceivable.
And there's a little ritual before he goes.
A small thing. Sungold gives him a red flower petal and tells him to place it at the exact spot where he re-enters Earth's dimension.
The exact spot. Okay.
Yeah.
And the re-entry itself, how does that feel?
It's immediate, visceral. He drives through this black gate into the field, and the contrast hits him like a physical blow. The parched grass, dry hedges, dust,
The noise.
overwhelming noise, honking cars, a train whistle, and the smells: dust, tar, barbed wire, horse manure, dirty paper, just the grit and grime of Earth.
And the flower petal.
It shrivels instantly, blackens. Its beautiful scent is gone, replaced by a mawkish odor. He feels this bitterly sorrowful grief at leaving Utopia behind.
He gets home. What's the reception like?
His wife is surprised. He's been gone more than a month, she says, but the telegram announcing his return only arrived 10 minutes before he did. Time difference, maybe.
Or just another strange detail. Does she notice a change in him?
Immediately. She says he looks wonderfully well. His skin is clear and brown. She even thinks he seems taller, that he's grown.
And what does he tell her? Where has he been?
He's vague, says he was just drifting about and dreaming, lost in a daydream, had a tremendous rest from everything. And significantly, he adds he wasn't thinking about earthly problems, politics, money, social issues.
His perspective has totally shifted.
Completely. He picks up his old newspaper, The Liberal, and it gives him mental rheumatics. He looks at his old colleague, Peeve, and just sees wallpaper on a damp wall.
Ouch. So he's done with that life.
Absolutely. He knows he has to leave the paper. He tells his wife he doesn't want a safe job anymore. There's other work before me. And Wells notes he speaks with this immediate, quiet, and assured determination, a tone she's never heard from him.
Even small things are different.
Yeah, like London butter tastes tasteless and unclean to him now. And when his son wants to study science, he fully supports it, brushing off worries about earning money with a simple, confident, that will come.
He's just changed. Fundamentally.
He feels it himself. He says he's grown inside and out, mind and body. He was in wonderful air, went to a new country, beautiful, wonderful.
And his wife's reaction to all this.
Her final line is quite poignant. Hearing his vague but obviously deeply felt descriptions, she just says, "You must take me there someday."
If only. So we followed Mr. Barnstaple all the way from being this disillusioned journalist, terrified the world was falling apart,
to accidentally finding this perfect world, experiencing its wonders, but also seeing the ugly side of humanity mirrored in his fellow Earthlings.
and then returning not broken, but transformed, forever changed by what he saw and learned.
Yeah, we've seen Earth's age of confusion, our confusion perhaps, starkly contrasted with a world built on knowledge, reason, adapting human nature, universal service, and a really clear-eyed view of reality.
And like Barnstaple, we live in a world that often feels confusing, full of massive problems, disappointments, dashed hopes.
Definitely. But his story, especially his return, offers this really powerful idea. Remember, Sungold saw that steadfast advance happening on Earth, even amidst the chaos.
And Barnstaple comes back ready to be a Utopian right here on Earth.
So the question Wells leaves us with, the really provocative thought, is what does that actually mean? For him, for us. What would it look like, sound like, feel like to try and be a Utopian, not in some faraway perfect world, but right here, right now, in our own messy, imperfect reality?
That's definitely something to chew on.